Hello and welcome to the podcast Love, Life and Loss. Today you have me, your host Louisa, and my amazing husband Marlon. So we're here today to talk about our son Zion. On the 27th of April would be his fifth birthday. And we're here today to talk about the last 5 years, how we found it, the things that we've gone through, and the things that we do to help keep his memory alive. So we thought it'd be fitting to release this podcast on his birthday. So the last 5 years, we've had some trials and tribulations, haven't we? It hasn't been the easiest 5 years, but I can't believe that we're actually here 5 years down the line already. Um, I mean, you've heard a lot from me over the last few years with the podcasts, but I thought it'd be nice for us as a couple, as a married couple, to sit down and talk about it, what it's like for us together as a family. So Marlon has agreed to join us today. So I'll hand over to you for a second then, babe. How have you found the last 5 years?
Well, it's been a roller coaster, isn't it? Really, I think of emotions, situations, but I think in amongst all that, um, appreciating our family more and what we have, as well as what we've lost, um, is I think something that we've all kind of got on with, and yeah, and basically, Zion is like he's here with us. You know, he's 5 years not here, been and gone, but he's not never gone. They're definitely not forgotten, and is in our everyday life. And I think, yeah, it's a testament to you pushing his memory, and also just the family and how we are with it, especially our other lovely kids that never forget him. Um, and always incorporate him on our family events and special occasions. And yeah, and we celebrate his birthday like he's still with us every year without fail. Um, and yeah, even though it's been 5 years, which is amazing that it is 5 years, you're right. And we
Mm.
are here, I think, stronger than ever and still here, really, together as one big team.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're honest, it hasn't been the easiest of 5 years. I think anybody that's experienced baby loss will understand, or anyone that's experienced grief will understand that it impacts people in different ways. You grieve at different times or in different ways, and you're not always on the same page. So I definitely feel that we've experienced that over the last 5 years. For me, I felt like at the beginning, we were very much on the same page, and then we started to go in different directions. And it's been challenging, but we've had to work really hard, I think. I don't think it's come easy at all. It's not a natural thing. We've really had to work hard with each other and keep that communication open. And we haven't always been the best at it, but I think 5 years down the line, definitely much better. We keep working at it and we keep trying. So um yeah, so anybody that's out there listening that's experienced baby loss, it is hard. But you need to just, I think for us, I mean, interrupt me if you like, but I think the key has been communicating. And so we haven't always been great at that. But when we do get it right, we notice the difference. What do you think?
Well, I think, yeah, communication, I think also understanding of each other, because you're not the same person that you were 5 years ago. So
Mm.
we've had to navigate that as a family, not just myself, but the kids as well, and be able to, I don't know, make sure we've adjusted like how we are to manage how you're feeling and how uh, things have changed, and that you weren't necessarily the same that you were 5 years ago. Um, which I think more so for probably our eldest, who's 12 now, almost 13. And so she was a bit older. The middle one isn't as she's probably the most loving out of all of them, but she at the same time she was obviously she's only 7 now, so she was only 22 at the time. So it was slightly different for her. But I think as a whole, you know, I think how we've navigated different situations over the last 5 years as a family has been great.
Yeah, because there's been, I mean, I was diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety after Zion. So, I mean, my mental health has been up and down, like, if we're honest. There's been moments where, the emotions, well, there's been a lot of lack of emotion, but the emotions that you tend to feel a lot is anger and sadness. And that can have an impact on the whole family if that's all I'm feeling, for example. Um, but it has, yeah, it definitely has impacted us as a family. But trying to, communicate, even with the children, I always try to communicate. If I know that I've been irrational, then I'll try and, apologize for that, own up to it, and try and explain to the children why I felt like that or why I've behaved like that. Because I can't always manage it, control it. So, but it's important to then have those conversations afterwards, to let them know that it's a me thing, it's my problem sort of thing, rather than it's their problem, and it doesn't impact them as much as it could. But yeah, we've been through a lot, haven't we? There's been lots of battles. I feel like we had, when he first passed away, it was trying to battle for his life to be validated, for him to be classed as an actual baby rather than a late miscarriage. Or, I mean, I hate that term. That's why I always say baby loss, because it doesn't matter at what stage of gestation I think you lose a baby. It's baby loss. I mean, we already had three miscarriages before Zion, and that impacted us. Not in the same way, but it did impact us. Um, so I just think there's so many things. There's so many layers to baby loss that unless you're living it, you don't really understand it. So I mean, even just when he was first born, I always remember when I was told to get a note from work, and I was like, "What do you mean a note? What note do you mean?" And they were like, "Oh, a sick note." I was like, "But I'm not sick. Just had a baby." And even the doctor, when they did the sick note, they wrote miscarriage on there, and I was like, "He's not. He wasn't classed as a miscarriage. Classed as a neonatal death." So having to go back to get them to change that, and then to all the battles that came along after that, even with the hospital, because we lost Zion on the 27th of April, and then on the 21st of February the following year, we had Marley. So I fell pregnant really quickly after losing Zion. So felt like that impacted us a lot as well. I mean, I know that I was very emotional during that pregnancy. Um, it seems like such a long time ago now, doesn't it? But it was if I can take myself back to that time, I remember crying all the time and just being so sad all the time, but not wanting to feel sad because I didn't want the baby to feel sad. But it was so hard. And then after having him, it took about a year, but I finally got the strength to take on another fight, which was the hospital, wasn't it? So we did a complaint with them, and now 5 years down the line, we're still going through. Well, actually, we just had one back, didn't we? Just before Mother's Day. So, which I found really difficult because I always find Mother's Day really difficult since losing Zion. And then, um, and then I had an operation not long after that to be sterilized and to be treated for endometriosis. And one of the reasons why I got sterilized because I'm absolutely petrified of falling pregnant again. And my body just doesn't do well with pregnancy, clearly. Because even with our rainbow baby, there was complications, weren't there? We ended up in
Basically the
hospital.
same weapon design, really. On this coming early, slightly later in weeks, but similar kind of setup. Luckily, we had the experience. Obviously, I say luckily, we had the experience, obviously, of what happened to Zion, so we could kind of take control a bit more, which is one of the main things I think for me with Zion is the helplessness, no control, no nothing, just kind of became graced us with his presence and went. And there's nothing I could do to help, which is as a parent and as a father, especially, that is all that really want to be able to do. But in our case, a couple of factors, one being COVID and not being allowed in the hospital, um, and just seeing everything on FaceTime, which is my experience of my son being alive is only via communication, video link, similar to right now. Um,
Yeah, that.
and that is something that I would have to take with me to the grave and have to accept, and which I've had to accept. But majority of the feeling throughout that time has just been, well, first 2 to 3 years, especially just anger. That how could they allow this to happen in this day and age?
Mm,
And that's the reality. And like he could have been with me because really it's a waste of your time you being in hospital.
mm,
Maybe for your own safety, but obviously the safety of Zion wasn't a factor for the hospital. To be honest with you, that wasn't something they were interested in. And that's something that really angers me. Now that even talking about it now, it's starting to actually make me feel angry now about it still 5 years on. But again, hindsight and experience moving forward, fast forward in a year to almost a year to Mali, or not even a year really, but fast forward into Mali's situation, then we were able to control it and manipulate the situation to make sure he's still here to this day. Whereas if we potentially relied on the healthcare professionals, then we could
yeah.
be sitting there talking about two neonatal deaths, not
Mm,
one. So I give thanks for the fact that Marley's here and that we were blessed enough to be given a son to bring home. Um, but at the same time, I'm still proud of the fact that I say I've got two sons
mm.
and two daughters, all set. And yeah, and our angel will always be looking over us. And also always have my chain with this gold foot here, which is a mold of his foot, which I've had since we got married in 2020,
Yeah, so that's
which
another
was the
thing, isn't it? We did that as
perfect,
well.
perfect gift. So yeah, in between our boys, we got married
Yeah,
in all of
very
this.
good.
So which for me was a bonus with lockdown, limited guests, so fairly
It was
cheap
a cheap
wedding.
wedding.
Cheap wedding.
No.
So that's one good thing of it. Got that out of the way. Still honeymoon pending, believe it or not, 5 years later. But that's a different point. But yeah, I think going back to kind of helpless, feeling helpless and lack of control, that is my main feeling of that time is helplessness and anger. My main two feelings. But I think over the years, is what is kind of evident is that love has come more into that and appreciate over the 5 years. You appreciate the fact that he was here a bit more, and the fact that just the fact that he was born is something that I have to take to heart and that I hold on to, and that the fact that, like I said, that I had two sons, two daughters is something to be proud of as a father, and that is what stays with me, what
Mm.
keeps me
Yeah.
going. Um,
And people ask us, don't they? Like,
mm,
how many kids
mm,
do you have? We always respond with four.
mm,
Well, then you follow with that awkwardness afterwards. Like, oh, how old are they? Or, and then you have to go through and say, well, we lost one. And then like, oh, I'm so sorry. But we will always say that we have four kids. And so do the kids as well.
mm,
Like, they will always say that there's four of them.
mm.
And, so the girls will say they've got two brothers and a sister. And,
Yeah,
even Marley, he knows that he's got an older brother. Before him, they never got to meet, but he knows that he's got an older brother.
it's an angel brother looking over
Yeah.
him. He knows. He knows. He knows the name Zion. Um, because I don't think I won't say a day goes by, but like definitely it's not a week goes by without his name being mentioned a few times um, throughout everyday life of some sort, which is I think is amazing as well. That again, his memory is kept alive constantly, and like as I said, never forgotten. 5 years on, and as I said, yeah,
Yeah, he's
very
included, isn't
proud
he?
father.
And he's included in everything. Stop doing that. Yeah, he's always included in everything. So even like at Christmas, we'll always make sure that we have our days when we go to the cemetery, and he has his little bits that we take up to the cemetery. Halloween, we make sure we've got bits for the cemetery for that as well. Like, he's always included. He's never forgotten. So we do little things like that. That's how one of the things that we do to keep his memory alive. So we said earlier that we got married. So one of the reasons why we got married was because he was actually due on the 26th of August. And I personally have a lot of anniversaries, of death anniversaries in August, including my dad, for example. His anniversary is the 14th of August. And we wanted to have something a positive anniversary, a happy anniversary. So we decided we'll get married. We didn't get married on his due day, but we got married that weekend of his due day, which happened to fall on the bank holiday weekend. So instead of always feeling sad, we've got something to celebrate now. So yeah, so 3 months after Zion passed in the April and in the August, we got married.
Once we were allowed, everything opened back up
Yeah,
and we were
literally,
allowed
yeah,
to
we
actually
just about managed to get it
squeeze
in,
in
didn't
the
we?
church with a handful of us.
Yeah, I think there was 30 when we were able to do it. So we were lucky in that sense. And we still managed to have the people that we wanted there. And because even at that point, because again, there's so many layers that people don't take into account. Because when I went into hospital with Zion, Marlon's dad was already in hospital with COVID on a ventilator. Ended up on a ventilator about 4.5 weeks. At that point, we didn't know if he was going to survive because at that point, most people weren't surviving. They weren't coming out of the hospital. So, and also his grandma and his uncle had also been taken to hospital the week
It was on the
before.
same day.
Yeah, yeah, and all
Also,
three of them actually
on
went in the same day,
on
didn't
that
they?
bank holiday, kind of Easter weekend, I think it was. Um,
And same thing for COVID.
yeah,
And that was one of the reasons why Marlon didn't get to meet his son because he had to go and help his grandmother about, I think, 12 days it was after she was tested positive for COVID. He went and helped her and basically saved his cousin's life in the process. But because he had contact with her, that's why they wouldn't let him into hospital to meet his son. But they let him in afterwards to meet his son after he passed away. So that's something that always sits with me as well, to be honest with you. I find that's one of the hardest things for me to know that you didn't get to meet him. But I take comfort in the fact that I know that he heard you. Like you was on it. Thank goodness for FaceTime. But you were talking, he could hear you, he heard your voice, and that's something. Like I hold on to those things. And I think and that's another thing with grief and baby loss, that it makes you appreciate the smallest things. So you in a way even though you feel you're so robbed and you're in so much pain, you can still feel so blessed all at the same time. So yeah, there's so many layers.
yeah. I think also that when we're talking COVID, like if you speak to the general public of COVID times, everyone's got some kind of story um, of something, and it's a mixture of joy and heartache over that time. For some people, like for us, before Zion died, we were loving life, really. It was
Yeah.
we were at home together as a good family kind of time. We all spent, obviously, we had to spend every every minute of the day together. But sun was shining. We're
Mm.
out in the garden eating lunch, dinner out there, and yeah, kids were doing their bits on wherever
Yeah. We were organized,
platform,
weren't we?
and it was. I think our house, luckily, was ready for COVID at the time,
Mm.
so we had changed like one of our rooms to an office. In fact, this room to an office stroke family area. So the kids all had enough space to kind of be dotted around the house. And we're fortunate in that sense, like we weren't necessarily on top of each other.
Mm.
Um, and
We were lucky.
apart from Zion passing away, which obviously is a catastrophe, but everything else was great times. There's good memories of that period. Obviously, it was short lived. It was only a couple months, but
A couple of weeks.
it felt like a while.
Yeah, it was actually a couple of weeks. I think we went into lockdown in March and then end of April, that I was born. So, I mean, obviously we'd had horrendous things before that as well. One of our good friends had passed away as well, suddenly. But that just made us feel even more blessed, didn't it? I remember the week before, like standing on the doorstep, just saying like how blessed I felt. Like and especially when we just found out we was having a boy as well. I mean, we'd got two girls before that, so we were so happy to find out that we was having a boy. Yeah, and just life just felt so good. Like we could see the chaos around the world, so we could fully see how lucky we were as a family.
Yeah.
And before that, we were hardworking people, and my husband got his own business, so he wouldn't always be at home, so we wouldn't necessarily always have dinner together, for example. So things like that during lockdown, we appreciated and valued so much, didn't we, to be able to have dinner together as a family every day. And then on the 27th of April, our whole world just shattered. And for me, lockdown, lockdown didn't make a difference to me. In fact, actually, it was a blessing because it meant that I could just sit in my grief and not have to worry about interacting with other people in that sense. But so I don't feel like we were impacted by lockdown in the same way everybody else was. But then we had Marley as well, and that was during the second lockdown, wasn't it, as well? Um, that was really hard. So for me, after having Marley, I felt like I'd done really well during the pregnancy. I could say I was sad a lot and angry a lot, but I really made a conscious effort. I started counselling, so I really made a conscious effort to, try and work through my grief. But after I had him, for the first 2 weeks, I was living on adrenaline and I was loving life. And then he got quite poorly and got a urine infection and ended up in hospital for a couple of days. And then I came out the day before Mother's Day, and I really struggled. Like that was my worst Mother's Day. It was my first Mother's Day after losing Zion as well. And since my worst Mother's Day, I would say I hadn't slept for days properly. A newborn baby who was poorly. And yeah, it was just horrible, if I'm honest with you. And I've never really liked Mother's Day since. And then the following month would have been Zion's first birthday. So I really struggled with that. That first couple of months, I would say, hit me hard. Um, and I did really struggle with it. What was it like for you? Because I don't feel like we really talked about it.
To be honest with you, the hardest thing for me personally is just having to deal with you, if I'm honest, and and trying to show some kind of empathy to the way you're feeling. Because for me, in navigating our relationship, navigating obviously the your current situation at the time, um, your headspace and where you're at with your grief and where you're at with
My mental health
obviously
is what it means.
mental health and to everything. I think not even just mental health, but just in general. And I think it has changed you forever. Um, and it's just navigating, dealing with this new person effectively in the house, and just in life and the way you have set certain things that you want doing. I think for me, I'm fairly easygoing, but at the same time, I can turn quite quickly as well when I don't like, if I think things aren't right. And I think knowing what's right was the problem,
Mm,
and knowing what is right for you, and me to try and figure that out when it's completely different to what I've known over the, obviously we were together many years prior to that. Was it like good 12 years or 12, 13 years prior to that,
mm,
I would said. So navigating what I thought the person was I knew at the time to now this new person, effectively that's how it feels to me.
mm,
And also for everyone as well, to kind of adjust to that situation, is what the difficulties has been. Like for me, I try and stay as constant as I can, but at the same time, you've got to deal with your own feelings and situations. But I think for me personally, I feel as a father, it's slightly different because we didn't, at the end of the day, Zion wasn't with me, he wasn't inside me. I didn't give birth to him, I didn't actually touch Zion until he was already passed away. Um, and everything I saw was just visual, of him being alive, which I'm still grateful for because, like, without that, it would just been effectively a phone call to say that he was born and died, and that would have been it. But without actually physically seeing him, um, and also because I was able to go and see him afterwards. So once he was born, I was able to go and see him of that night time. It was quite several hours later. Um, he looked completely different to how he looked
mm,
when
yeah.
he was on camera when he was born. So um, obviously in terms of kind of his appearance, and actually holding him is something that again that will go with me to the grave forever is something. But the main thing I remember of that time is obviously he was cold.
Mm,
Effectively, it's a cold, stiff, dead body. So it was my experience of touching a dead body was probably I think that was probably the first time. Normally, I've been to funeral directors, things like that, but you probably see me standing quite a bit back, and I won't be touching a dead body. Um, but since that day, if I'm honest, I have touch other dead bodies, and it's nothing to me now. But at the time, it was something. So when my grandma passed, I sat there with her and held her, kissed her, and I was there. But that wasn't something that I would have um, even contemplated prior to Zion being born. Um, but ultimately, that's my memories of physically holding him, which I always have with me.
Mm.
Um, but again, it's a mixture of emotions because you have this you've got this love for the fact that when he was mine, anger that he's passed away, and thinking about what I'm going to do next, or what we're going to do next. Um, and then after the hospital, going there on the day, coming home, getting Louisa back home, that was the realization of the condition that Louisa was in was evident as soon as she got home because I've never heard her cry like that in my life, and I always will remember that. I've never had anyone cry like that. I've seen it in films, but never like in real life. When you can feel the pain and the hurt in someone's cry, it's something to behold, really. And
Making me
and it
emotional
was
now.
something that one of the words was like, "What am I going to do now?" Kind of thing. It was along those lines, or they might have been them exact words, to be honest with you. Um, and yeah, the cry that come from it, you get that deep feeling cry where it's like literally I could pour every ounce of hurt and pain you could hear in her. And yeah, uh, those things there is things that I remember. And just thinking, Marlon, mate, you got to step up. It's, this woman is,
I
she's
was
broken right
broken, yeah.
now.
I was
She's
broken.
broken. So how are we going to put her back together? What can I do to do that? And that was kind of me. And at the same time, we've got two other kids at home. This is before obviously Marley. So we've got two other kids at home during lockdown. No one's going nowhere. We're all in under one roof, going through all of this. And obviously for the kids, they're young, so just kind of understanding it all, seeing their mum in that condition. Um, and again, for them, not knowing what to do really. So like little drawings and touching and cuddles and people like Bella can see. Who's Bella's like our middle child. She's that's our second child, I should say. And she's very loving, caring, and yeah, she's one of these people that is a bit more emotional than the other kids, but knows
She's
how to show her
she's very
feelings.
in tune, isn't she? She's like she was only 2.5 when Zion passed away, but I always say she was my hero because she would just come and just sit next to me, not say a word, but just put a hand on me or
Mm,
just cuddle me, and
mm,
that was enough, for me. She was my savior. They all were. You all were, but she was one. I don't know if it's because she was so little or not, but she was one that would always touch my heart the most. Just because I don't know, it was just like she knew because she wasn't interested in me before that, was she? She's a proper daddy's girl. Um, but when I first came home from hospital, she spent a lot of time around me. She just stayed by me
mm,
a lot. And yeah, she did. She did help me. I was a mess. I was a mess when I first came home from the hospital. It's what I call the zombie stage. I was here, but I wasn't here. Um, and I think losing Zion has changed us all to a degree. I just think it's more visible with me because um, yeah, very visible with me. I am not the same person that I used to be. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Um, Zion has helped me to learn to love myself more and it's okay to put myself first sometimes, and to own my truth, speak my truth, and just to make the most of life. Because as we know, life is too short. Um, so yeah, but I don't have as much patience maybe as I used to. So there are some things that, you know, aren't the greatest, I suppose. Um, but yeah, and I do, and like I say, I think it's impacted us all. And we've all changed to a degree. Um, I just think the rest of the family may be a little bit more subtle than I am. But it definitely does. That's something that I've found that most people that I've interviewed or spoken to say the same thing.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's like I said, like, you're not the same person, you're a completely different person, to be honest with you. So it's
Would you
literally
say I'm completely different?
full circle change, to be honest with you. And that's what I think personally. I may just be like the husband. I think things are changing every 5 minutes, but that is something that is very evident. Even the language used by you is completely different to how you spoke 5 years ago. You speak in a different manner, you use different language, you're more in tune with emotion, feeling, and things like that, I think, which is something that you can kind of coast through life, not really addressing a lot of your feelings and emotions,
Mm,
just get on with things. And I'm part of that old school kind of
yeah.
thing where you just roll your sleeves and get on with it, which is, I think, helped me, to be honest, having that attitude over the last 5 years. If I didn't, then there's no point in both of us being kind of trying to kind of find ourselves and try and get some kind of level playing field in our heads. Um, but I think that's just the masculinity side of things. I know not all men are the same. A lot of men have, obviously, especially in this day and age, you want to be talking about your feelings and getting out there, which I think you should, especially if you find that you're struggling, especially. Um, but I think it is good to talk. Um,
Oh
but I
yeah,
think at
definitely.
the same time, you need to be talking to the right people, because sometimes there's a lot of people out there that are not genuine people or nice people. And if you let your kind of innermost feelings out there, they
Make
may
yourself
take advantage
vulnerable.
of that, and then you become a vulnerable person, which you don't want to be in that position. But as long as you're dealing with honest and decent people, which could be a family, could be a complete stranger, could be a counselor, could be whoever, I think that can help. I think for me,
We've
I've still got my mum, and if I need to speak something serious, I'll speak to my mum about it. Um, the response I get from mum sometimes won't be what I think I need, but she's yeah, again, very old school, kind of ex-police officer, very straight down the line and quite stern with certain things. But I think it was good to have her there, and I know the perspective that I get will be
an honest one.
honest, positive, and a bit inspirational, and sometimes a kick up the bum, to say, you haven't got time in a way to think. You've got to think about your other kids and think about your family, think about building your life, think about the future, which sometimes I think you can get lost in. I think there's no future at some point when you're in certain depths of your
But it feels like that, doesn't it? Sometimes,
emotions.
especially when you're at the raw
Mm,
stages of it. Um, but I think just touching on what you're saying about talking and communicating, it's the society that we live in says that men should just be, these strong men that looks after everybody and, doesn't really show their emotions that much. That can be really destructive. And I feel that we've got better at talking to each other about how we're feeling. And I genuinely feel that has definitely improved our marriage by being able to do that. Um, because I do think it's really important that people do talk and express themselves. A problem shared is a problem halved, as they say. If we bottle stuff up too much, then it can turn into something else and it becomes unmanageable. So I do feel that it is really important to talk, and like Marlon said, it's finding that right person to talk to. And especially if if you're in a relationship, the one bit of advice that I would try and give people is just to keep that communication lines open and honest as possible. Because it does make a difference, I think. It does.
and yeah, I think for me as well, I think you need to, depending on how you brought up, I think I had a good upbringing. So I think depending on like your support network around you and who you've got around you, whether that's family, friends, or whatever, colleagues, or whatever you kind of can confide in, I think it's just finding the right network is something you have to choose wisely.
But touching on that though, I don't know about you, but I found, well, you can clearly see it was evident with me, but grief, losing Zion, and that's another thing that I feel like he's guided me in that way, is that you tend to see who's genuine. and who isn't when you're going through things like that. Um, or it's not even necessarily who's genuine, but who's on that path with you, should I say? Because lots of people drop off, and they drop off quite early on, because people do think there's a timeline on grief, and after a certain amount of time, everybody should be fine and cracking on with things back to normal. That's not reality. So for me personally, that was another thing that my circles have become a lot smaller, for example. Um, I don't see as many people as I did before, and I don't give myself out to as many people as I used to. Like my energy is precious, more precious now. I treat it more precious. So whereas before I would be running around after everybody, for everybody all the time. Not anymore. I still find it hard to say no sometimes, but I'm much better at it.
Yeah. I think again, it's then picking your right circles, isn't it? Again, going back to that aspect of putting yourself around like-minded people and people that are going to
Yeah,
bring you up and not bring you down. I think that is, like for me personally, I'm not a person that has loads of circles anyway. As a kid, yeah, you have loads of friends and then different circles of everything. For me, my circles are very small, and a lot of them are just in and around my family, and not stretch much past that. So I think you just got to find a place where you feel most comfortable. Um, and to be honest, with you, I've had to kind of delve a bit deeper in my feelings and emotions over the last 5 years because I'm very much that old school man should be, be tough, just chin up and roll your sleeves up, get going with it. Um, but I think over the last 5 years for me, family over work, especially, is something that there's nothing more important than my family, and work can always take a back seat for that. Which, in the day and age that we live in, and earning money and doing what we need to in that sense, um, is difficult because you can get consumed in just making money all the time, just so that you can,
mm,
give to your family. But it's not all about money; it's about being present and
yeah.
being,
So
yeah,
chasing for tomorrow,
yeah.
just appreciating the present now. Like I said, that's the key bit. What you said, being present.
But I think, like in my industry, like I have my own estate agency. I've been an estate agent for many years. So sell property is something that you always forward thinking 24/7 because you sell a property today, that'll take several months before it completes and you get paid on it or do whatever. So you're always replenishing all the time. And you're always thinking months ahead. Um, and sometimes you can miss out on what's going on like right now in front of you. Um, and I think for me, my mindset since 2020 has been, you know, I need to make sure I'm going to every school function.
Mm.
I'm I mean, I don't want to miss anything, and I want to make sure I'm there for everything that happens in their lives because, as we know, life is short and precious. So you need to make the most of everything. I think that is more at the forefront of my mind than ever.
Mm.
Um, and one of the main things in terms of dealing with the grief and death of Zion is this, if I'm honest with you. So my chain, I don't ever take off, and his foot sits more or less on my heart 24/7.
And this is the actual size of his foot as well. I mean, thanks to his amazing wife. I've got it for him as a wedding present, but my cousin's a jewelry maker, so he made it for us. But it's the actual size of his foot, it's the print, everything of his foot. And then on the back, it's got, his name and his date of birth on there as well. And I think it is important, isn't it, to have those reminders. And that's the sort of things that we do. We have little reminders like that. If you walk around our house, there's pictures of him all over the place. We've got bits with all of our family's names in them, and his names are in that. Anything that we can include him in, we will. Even to Christmas, he has his own stocking. He has his own Christmas tree decorations. So, I mean, all the kids have their own stockings and have their own Christmas tree decorations. Just because he's not here doesn't mean he should be any different and he should get left out. So we don't leave him out. And sometimes some people might, and that's innocently. Nobody it's never going to be at the forefront of your mind like the parents, if for instance a baby dies. But so not everybody will think to remember him or include him with things. And those times it does make me feel sad. I understand that, everybody not everybody thinks the way that I think, but it still does make me feel sad. But and as time's gone on, I've got more and more confident to say that as well, because at the same we can't expect people to read our minds and to know what we're thinking and feeling. So if we don't express that, then things won't change. So if, I often hear people say that people, when they write them Christmas cards, for example, they don't include their baby that passed away. Whereas I wouldn't personally, I don't expect that because I feel that people might find that really weird and strange and uncomfortable. Um, but I still don't want him to be forgotten about or left out. And so if there's a time where I feel like he could have been included and he wasn't, I will say that. I will say it now. Where before I felt uncomfortable to say that, whereas now I'm getting more and more confident to say it. So, and not in a way that's going to cause an argument or upset people, but just in a way so they can understand me a bit better. So the next time something like that happens, they might think a bit differently. But again, it's down to communication.
I think also it's again you have to sometimes adjust your expectations of people because they're not going through what we've been through. They're not, you know, they're not. They didn't even think to say that we're going to include someone that's not here.
Mm.
And for me personally, I don't expect anyone to do anything to or say anything to do with Zion because one, they never met him. They again, it's something that is not. It wasn't something that was present to the general public. I know for our family, we don't forget him. And I think that's enough for me personally. I'm not really bothered about anyone else, even extended family or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. It's more about our feelings, our family unit in this under the one roof and how we celebrate that. And I wouldn't expect, because as a like a lot of my friends and family and things like that on the male side of things, talking about a death of a baby or feelings towards that is not really what people talk about, and actually that they even want to talk about because it's difficult, it's sad, it's not the kind of conversations people like to have.
Mm.
And I think for me personally, I never expect anyone to even mention him, if I'm honest with you. It's one of those things. But I think I think on the grief side of things and the baby loss side of things, in terms of being in that headspace and staying in that headspace, which I think is where Louisa is. And like for me personally, it's one of those things you kind of, a lot of people like to sweep grief and things out of the way and loss and try and move on from the fact that that's ever happened. And sometimes they just hide it away and never to be spoken about again, which I don't think is right, especially when it comes to like a baby or just the fact that it was my son. I wouldn't expect that to happen in our household, but I don't expect other people either to be um, on the same wavelength as us
Oh yeah, no.
when it comes to him and including him and whatever, because 9 times out of 10, people probably forgot all about Zion in terms of
No.
him being around us as a
So you're
family
not our Zion.
and so on. But um,
See, for
in terms
me,
of Louisa and where she's at with it and what she's doing with a podcast, what she's doing with everything to do with life at the moment, I think it's almost impossible for his name to be forgotten.
yeah.
And if you're following her, you'll know that. But if you're not, then you probably wouldn't. And I think it just depends on where you're at and where you're at in our lives, to be honest with you. But if you're not necessarily on that page, then you probably find that you probably won't hear from us that much because that is where we're at, and we want that kind of uh, I don't know how do you say it, feeling and
Kind of
I don't know,
energy around us.
yeah, energy has to be all inclusive, um,
I mean,
and including obviously our son that's not here. I know you want to talk over me on that, but I think that is kind of how I see it when it comes to males, especially. Female side is very different, I think, and I've seen that amongst your own friends and family. But from a male aspect, um,
and I think it
it's
could.
very rare anyone asks
Yeah.
you how you are or whatever. So it's not something that I expect anyone to. And is it something that I do to other people? Probably not. So it will probably
I don't
try and
know.
cheer people up the other way without mentioning the difficult things, and that's what happens a lot.
I don't know if I agree. I think
I'm
you
saying from
do.
the male
No,
perspective,
I say I
so
think
I
you
don't think
do
you
as
could
well.
actually add to
Talk
that.
to I do think you do talk to some of your people, not all the time. It's not something that
Not about
you're gonna
Zara
have,
on my feelings. We don't.
no, but maybe it's men amongst men because I've had men talk to me about how they feel
Yeah, they'll
about
probably talk
baby
to a
loss.
female about it, but again,
Yeah.
men amongst men. I don't think I don't know, I might be wrong. You guys can tell me I'm wrong on that, but from my experience, but
I think no,
I'm an
I
early
don't.
80s
Yeah,
baby and into 7. I think in terms of how we think, it's probably slightly different to a modern day kind of man. So I think that is where I'm at with it.
I do. Yeah, so I'm not even disputing. I think you're not alone at all in that. But I don't necessarily think it's best practice, should I say. Um, there's nothing wrong with talking about how you're feeling and getting that support or perspective from somebody else. I think our society makes it hard. This is why I think it's good that we have these conversations and that we're doing things
Mm.
like this and doing the podcasts and
But I think it goes back to what I was saying originally is that you have to make sure it's the right people that you're expressing your feelings to get the right support from those people.
mm,
And it's men don't like to necessarily be vulnerable to other men, but they could be vulnerable to a female. And I think it just depends on who it is. And then you get other men that, that they live for their friends and their friends' support is one of the a large thing in their life.
mm,
So they're able to speak openly about everything. I'd rather speak to their friends about stuff than their own family. Whereas for me, it's probably the other way around, but for a lot of people, their friends are their be all and end all of their support system, as far as what they're comfortable with sharing. And I think that's the difference between probably me and some other people. That is not necessarily friendship groups, but I am a more family orientated in terms
mm.
of advice, support, and other things.
And I think it's important to recognize as well that support can come in different shapes and forms. You don't have to be talking about your grief, for example, or your baby that you've lost to have support for someone to support you. At the beginning, there's a different, like I said, a different stages. There's so many layers to it. At the beginning, our biggest support was friends and family cooking dinner for us, wasn't it? Taking that stress off of us, so we didn't have to worry about that. Because we said we did have two children at home with us, so that was huge support. People just coming around and coming for walks with you. We don't have to talk about anything. That's so there's different types of support. You don't always have to talk about things. Me and my friends, we don't always talk about stuff, but I do feel very lucky that I have got a group of friends and family that don't feel uncomfortable to talk about Zion and to mention his name, and they never have done. So, and they've always talked about him and spoke about him. So, and anyway, it helps me. So I've never had that issue. Whereas I know other people have had that. But it is support comes in so many different ways, and it works for so many different people. Even us who's sitting here listening to us, what works for me is very different for what compared to what works for Marlon. Like for me, movement has been one of my biggest healers, yoga, and now I've discovered MIM, um, medicine in movement, or movement is medicine. Never remember which way around it goes, but there's lots of different ways. But because we've gone through a lot of stuff over the last 5 years. We lost Zion, and then we had to go through his funeral. I mean, even things like getting we got his death certificate before we got his birth certificate. In fact, it was about 4 months apart, wasn't it? Like, I think we got his death certificate near enough straight away afterwards, which was incorrect. I had to go back and get them to change it. That was another fine. Um, and then it was in August, wasn't it?
So you got the first different.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
August.
Obviously, there was a few issues with that because of the times that we were in, but
It's COVID, obviously. So
yeah,
not everybody would have experiences like that. But for us, that's what it was like. And then in between, now we got married, and then we had another baby. And then we were still trying to come out of lockdown and this whole new way of living as well. And then so with work, having to go back to work after losing a baby and then having another baby and trying to navigate that with PTSD and anxiety, especially as a manager as well. And then having to deal with the complaints of the hospital. I felt like I've had to be a solicitor and I've had to teach myself so many different things and learn so many different things, read so many different papers just to be able to respond to these people. And now, 5 years down the line, we're still going through that process. It's not finished. We've had one come back, which hasn't given me us the outcome that I wanted, and I'm not just going to give up there either, even though they'd like me to. I'm not going to. And then we're waiting for another one. We had two for both of our sons because the treatment that I received during my pregnancy with our rainbow baby as well wasn't great. And like Mara said, we had to do a lot of advocating for ourselves. I had to learn about a lot of different things, and so to be able to tell the doctors this is what you need to do, like things like having an extra scan and things like that. And luckily we did, because then that's when my cervix started to open, and then I had to go and have a stitch put in. So we had to deal with all of that, and then have him now, raise him, which is amazing. He's an amazing boy, and I absolutely adore him. But it still doesn't make it easy all the time. There's still moments where I find it really difficult. His birthday, for example. I know you probably feel different about this, but for me, it's always a trigger for me. So when it's Zamali's birthday, I always think of Zion, not him not being here, and I find it really sad. The feelings are really conflicting. So it's all of those different layers to baby loss that people don't take into consideration. But I think for us personally, we've had our trials and tribulations, but I think we've done pretty amazing, to be fair. And going back to what you said before about not everybody would feel comfortable to say his name or even know his name. And I felt that a lot at the beginning, that how much people found it uncomfortable to talk about him or to mention it. And this is one of the reasons. This is the main reasons why we do the podcast. And because of this podcast, because of him, I don't feel like that so much anymore. Like this is our space. I've created a space now where people will expect me to talk about my son and welcome it and want to hear about it, and I invite other people into that space to do the same as well. So I'm really happy that I feel really lucky that we've got this, but I've had to create it. It's not just something that's just come easy. It's not something that was just there. I've had to create this space because I felt the awkwardness and the difficulty of being able to talk about Zion, a baby that's passed away. So having this podcast and now changing my whole career to work around grief and baby loss, he is it. I'm in this space now, so I get to speak about Zion all the time and don't feel uncomfortable doing it. And I'd like to think even without the podcast, I would have got to a point where I didn't feel uncomfortable doing it. Um, but yeah, here we are, 5 years down the line. When did I start this podcast? 2022. So 2 years after he passed away, and that was out of a desperate need to tell my story, of to be felt understood, because I really felt misunderstood. Um, and I just feel like it's a continued journey. That we keep going, and I'm learning more and more about myself and other people are learning more about me, and I feel more and more understood as time goes on. Yeah.
Well, I think it's for you. I would say yes, your story, but I think other people's stories have helped you feel more comfortable in yourself about the situation we're in, having a baby that has passed away, and knowing that there's a lot of people out there that are going through worse situations than ours. I know there's nothing worse than actually losing someone, but people that we're fortunate enough to have, obviously, through every kids, but look, people that have been going through this over and over as well, not just kind of a one-off. Um, People that, in terms of how they lost their babies, what they went through, and nearly dying themselves, and loads of different stories, and loads of people that have been in a similar headspace to what you have. I think has helped you as well, letting you know that you're not the only one out there. I think that has helped you. Um,
Mm.
for me personally, I don't know how you can do it 24, like all the time, like dealing with your own grief as well as taking on other people's, not necessarily taking on, but having to kind of absorb other people's grief as well is very difficult. And I find that tough to this day, even if I go to any event and people's stories, because it always brings you back to your own situation and loss. And for me, it isn't just baby loss, but my other loved ones that I've lost as well in terms of family, my grandparents, especially. My grandma died like a year after Zion died. But there's things that you hold on to. Like even the fact that Rainbow Baby got to meet my grandma just before she passed away. And having those memories again brings me back to family for me and what is important really and what you can hold on to more than anything. And I think when I go back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast in terms of feeling anger and things like that, that's the bit that I've been trying to get out of my system in general. Especially obviously Zara was a massive part of that and the hospitals and the rest of it, how it all went down. Um, Marley, I think I kind of have because he's here. And we managed to get to survive any awkward
Mm.
situations. He's just turned 4 now, so yeah, it's something that I try and hold on to all the wins rather than all the outstayed losses or negativity. Because I think that's all we can hold and move forward for, but never forgetting what's happened at the same time.
No, it's all about perception, isn't it? Like I always see it as Zion gave us Marley. If we didn't lose Zion, we wouldn't have Marley.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's one of the main things that from Dave Dot when Marty arrived here, that was it basically. That this was a gift from Zara and he sent your brother down here.
mm,
And yeah, the rest of that you just walk in and you're living within us and that's it. And that is something again, since I got this chain as well, is something that before Marley came is something that I held on to that he'll always live on through us and go wherever we go. Um and yeah, but yeah, it's crazy. 5 years. Crazy 5 years.
5 years. So every year we always bake a cake for him, don't we? For his birthday. Always, that's one thing I'll always do. Because that's not many things I can do for him. So I'll cling on to the things that I can do. And we always mark the day because it's unfortunately his birthday is the same day as his anniversary, but we don't we celebrate his birthday. That's how we choose to do it. We celebrate his birthday. We have the rest of the year to mourn him. So we celebrate on his birthday. So he doesn't ever get forgotten. But it does impact me in the upcoming months, not even weeks, months. I find that probably from like December, I start to struggle. I think it's because I've got my dad passed away on the 6th and his birthday's in December. And then we have Christmas and then we have my husband's birthday, and then it's Marley's birthday, then it's Mother's Day, and then it's Zion's birthday. So there's lots of different moments for me. Again, I'm aware that they don't impact me in the same way that they impact Marlon. But again, this is all about perception and as an individual as well. So I have those moments where I do struggle, and I find this time of year quite difficult. And I know that I've noticed a pattern in the last few years. Come May, after Zion's birthday, I suddenly start to feel like I've got loads more energy, and I want to be able to do more stuff, and I'll interact more, and I'll be more social. But I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm cool with that. I know that's how I am these days. So I can be prepared for that, you know. I know that's just how. So in an ideal world, I'll only work 6 months of the year, you know. So, but
I think you even have more throughout the year. So you have a few, probably a couple months off, and then you'll be back again on something else that would trigger. So I don't think it's 6 months. I don't think it's half the year. I think you give yourself a few months off, but there's always some kind of milestone in there that is a trigger of some sort for you. I think even throughout the summer, you only get to August and then it starts again. So there's only a couple months in there, probably about 3 months of the year. So the rest of the months is the same for you. I think there's always a trigger somewhere down the line.
yeah, I mean, yeah,
Even down to your own birthday, I think is another trigger for you.
yeah, well, it's not always the same anymore, is it? But I feel like for me, because we've been dealing with the complaints as well, they are a huge triggers for me. Every time I hear from the hospital or the ombudsman, gives me a huge trigger because I have to go over everything in detail. Um, but I think again, over the last 5 years, perception has changed so much for us. So to where we were, you know, this time 5 years ago to where we are now, it's a big step, I think. So, you know, anybody that's going through baby loss, especially at the early stages, you know, have patience with yourself, be kind to yourself. You know, the perception does change and it continues to change as well. How you feel now might not be how you feel in 6 months' time or 2 years' time. Things do change. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, an easy journey, because it's not an easy journey, but is life an easy journey? You know, but I feel like we are definitely stronger. Um, and I think we were quite strong before, but I definitely feel like we're stronger. I feel like we know ourselves better as well, um, which helps in our relationship, I think. Um, but it's a, I think for just keep that communication open, because grief definitely impacts the relationship. And it, like I say, especially when you're going in different paths, doing feeling things at different times, it definitely can be difficult to manage and to support each other. Um, but I just know that everyone's different as well. I think that's the one of the key things for us is, as you can see through this interview, we've felt differently about things and thought differently about things. But that's okay, because we're different people. We're individuals. So, you know, what impacts me in a certain way is not necessarily going to impact Marlon in that same way. And also people's experiences are different. You know, we've both lost a son, but how we experienced that, unfortunately, was different. Marlon said he didn't get to meet his son when he was born. So he wasn't with me when I gave birth to him. Um, he came afterwards. And that again, it affects us both, but in different ways. So it is it is a journey, but there is light at the end of that, at the end of the tunnel. I think there's when we, you know, for me personally, when I first came out of the hospital after losing Zion, I didn't think I'd ever laugh again. But you know, we do, and we do smile again, and we do feel joy again, and we do start to live life again. I was definitely in survival mode for a long time, but I feel like I'm transitioning out of that now into living life again. He done better at it than I did. But again, I feel that's because he felt that he had the responsibility as a man of the house to take control and look after everybody. Whereas if he didn't have that responsibility, it might have been a different story.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I think responsibility. I think the other kids, to be honest, helped me, and that's 'cause that's something straight away I had to focus on. I had to focus on them and you, and yeah, just get this this new way of living effectively, which is incorporating Zion in that all the time, and also obviously when Marley then came the following year, then we had a whole other body in the house as well. So it's there's lots happening over the last 5 years, um, and yeah, I think yeah, we're doing okay.
Is there any key things or key moments you want to mention before we finish?
Um, well, just from the male perspective and supporting your partner in this and supporting yourself, um, it's it is very difficult um, to not snap. Like I can get like snappy sometimes off the back of things that when I think things can be done differently, or I think things are being made harder for us for no reason. Um, it can really annoy me, but at the same time, the way you see things sometimes is going to be completely different to how potentially you would have dealt with things before, or how we would have dealt with things before as a couple. It's different now. And I think being able to adjust um, just to life in general, which I think we all have to in a way, just as the world evolves and changes constantly. You do need to make sure your feelings are changing with that as well. But I think at the same time, keeping your core principles and hopefully not changing them if they're decent, um, to make the best of your life and everyone around you. Um, and I think that's what's tough, to find your own space as a bloke who hasn't got the hormonal aspect to it or actual feelings like that to it, and getting almost taking a back seat and just help kind of steer the ship in a way. That's all you're doing really, not really taking full control, because it's not really yours to control, if you see what I mean. It's not my head that I'm trying to control on you. It's you just have to be there to support someone. And I think that support comes in all different shapes and sizes and methods that you just need to be able to navigate that, which is different for everyone. I can't really say how you do it. You just kind of do. Um, the common ground is you have to kind of understand where people are coming from. And I think for me, I understand it, but I don't necessarily agree with it. And sometimes you end up imposing your own personal feelings and how you feel on someone else when that isn't how they're feeling, if you see what I mean. I don't know if I said that right, but you have to be open-minded a bit more
Yeah, but
to different aspects of people's psyche.
and basically you're saying is, people are going to can think differently, but that's okay. Basically, you don't have to force your opinions on somebody else. Is that what you're saying?
Um, I think just in general, the whole psyche could be completely different. It could be completely opposite to what it was before, or just on a completely different path to how your psyche was before. And you need to, adjust to all of that to actually move forward and live on and live to the best of your ability as a family. I think that's
Mm.
where the hard bit is, just making that adjustment.
Yeah. The key thing that comes to mind when you say that is I think for marriage, any relationship, but for me, especially marriage, when you take those vows, I take them seriously, and it's about loving every version of that person because we evolve, we change anyway, but especially when we go through things like baby loss, it will impact us, it will change us. I am 100% not the same person that I was before. I mean, there's still some traits there that's the same, but there's a lots that aren't, and I'm more than okay with that. But it's about having to. So for my husband.
It's about us being okay with that as well,
Yeah,
which is the hardest bit
yeah,
because
it's him.
that's
He
not
has to.
necessarily who I got with, it's someone else.
Yeah,
So you have to adjust your whole relationship like you're
yeah,
doing with
and that's
someone
what I
else.
was. Yeah, we
And that's
as human
where
beings we are ever evolving and changing. Anyway, I think so. I think that's a key. What's the word? Lesson in life. To learn in every aspect. When you're in a relationship, it's about being willing to love every version of that person because no one's ever going to stay the same. We're not stagnant. We're not going to stay the same. So it is, but because of what we've been through, the changes are more dramatic, probably. So yeah, Marlon has had to learn to love a different version of me. I'm not the same person that he met and that he agreed to enter into a relationship with and have children with and everything else. I have changed. Um, so is he. I not admit it as much, but so is he. But yeah,
yeah, I've had to change, which is what I said. So you have to change because it just wouldn't work. I wouldn't be sat here. I'll be somewhere else. You wouldn't have been in the same relationship because if you're trying to wait for your relationship to come back to what you know it as, 9 times out of 10, it will never go back.
yeah,
So you have to get your head around that first. And again, it's a roller coaster of emotions because for me, you think about, like for me personally, I never want to have my family split up or do anything. So I've done whatever I could to try and make that family unit as strong as possible. In terms of our household, our kids and our family, growing up with mum and dad on the same page and pushing for the right things and raising the family at the end of the day. Like I come from a single parent household, um, and I always want to make sure my kids had mum and dad there, fully supporting them and encouraging them to do the best in life. And I think that is something that will never change. And I think is a big driver as well to making a change in myself to support Louisa and what she's been through and going through and where she's heading as well. So but at the same time you've got to try and find your own space as well and try and, keep your own journey going and moving forward. But at the same time being sympathetic and supportive to the rest of the family.
yeah, yeah. I think it saddens me that we are 5 years down the line without him. Um, but I don't feel like we've been without him for that 5 years. It's weird because of this and because of the things that I do and the people I talk to. I feel like he's always been with me. He is always with me. Um, Obviously, last year I found it really difficult. He would have been 4, he would have started school, and there's a milestone. I found it really quite difficult, to be honest with you. This year. I don't know. I never know how I'm going to feel till the day. But yeah, it's just mad to think that we're already 5 years down the line. And but just don't get it twisted. Anyone that's listening, all the things that we're saying and how things have, changed, and how we've managed to learn how to live with our grief and everything else. There's still moments where it can be just as difficult as it was when it first happened. But there's a lot less moments like that. And there's a lot more moments where it's a lot easier. But even 5 years down the line, there can still be moments where it can be really difficult. So that is something that don't let that shock you, or if if you're just trying to support some friends and think that, oh God, suddenly why do they feel like this? Because it's normal, it's natural, it does happen. And I think that's again why it's important for us to have conversations. This is again why I do the podcast, to be able to for people to be able to express their feelings and talk about their journeys. So when we hear other people saying things that we've gone through or things that we've fought, then we know that actually that is normal. If other people are feeling it and thinking it too, then I'm not abnormal. This is okay. It is okay. There's no right or wrong. It is what it is. And you just got to manage it as best as you can. And for me, again, the best thing that you can try and not do is communicate. It's not always easy, it's not always possible. But when you can, do that, I think is the best thing, to try and have those difficult conversations sometimes, tell each other how you're feeling, and just try and work together, and just try and make sure that you are aiming for the same things, I think.
And I think also as well, you find it evident when you deal with like the generation above us, for instance, who lost kids 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And for them, as soon as you talk about it, they're back in that space straight away, and can see it. And they kind
Mm.
of then go off on their journey again. And that's tens of years ago that happened. So that's how you know potentially, this isn't something that will go away. This is something that you live with, and then you find a way of managing it. A lot of people put it in a box and hide it away somewhere in their brain, but it's something that you never forget though, and it's all it takes is a slight trigger to reopen those memories and emotions, and suddenly you can tell that a lot of people are right back where they were all them years ago. So I'm fully aware that even though it's 5 years and it can't believe it's 5 years, I think it's only 5 years,
Mm.
and it is still something that is very well, at least for the rest of your life, basically, and beyond.
Mm.
So I think you have to be ready for that as well. I think you have to put yourself in the right headspace to know that these feelings that you have potentially are not going anywhere, but you do have to manage them. If not, you'll consume it. So I
Yeah.
think it's about, like most things in life that are not necessarily positive. You have to then try and find the positivity in it and probably hold on to that. And at the same time, remembering what you've been through and what happened, um, and juggling that all and finding a way to move forward and still celebrate, um, like, yeah, the fact that they were born,
Yeah.
or the fact that, whatever kind of grief they put you, the memories that you had with that person, um, for whether it's seconds, minutes, hours, years, whatever. And I think, yeah, just hold on to those memories. And I think memories is all we have at the end of the day. And when we're all dead and gone, hopefully people can look back on your life and say, that's it. I think Zion's got that for eternity
Mm.
off the back of what you've achieved, and what you're still doing. So I think it's, yeah, his legacy will live on, and that's all that really
Mm.
matters. And
That,
so, and it
yeah.
is only 5 years.
Yeah.
So, and that is here forever, hopefully, and we'll continue to build on that, I think. And I think that is just the beginning of his legacy, just as it would have been if he was alive. So I think,
Wow.
yeah,
I feel like more people know his name now because he's not here. But yeah, I do. Thank you for saying that as well, because I do feel I don't always, you do it until you stop and look back and reflect. But I do feel really proud that we've got this podcast, and people know his name, Zion Esau Hendrickson. He was born on the 27th of April 2020. Like, people know his name. Like, and that was my biggest fear of people not knowing his name, people not knowing about him, and not having that way of having of saying his name sort of thing. Like because I have this podcast, I can say his name whenever I want. I can say his name whenever I want anyway. But do you know what I mean? It starts that conversation, and then it doesn't shock people so much either because when I say I've got a podcast where we talk about baby loss, and then it's expected, they expect to hear some kind of story afterwards. But regardless, I feel really proud that um people know his name, and I feel so proud of him. I know it sounds really, it's going to sound really bizarre, but I actually feel so proud of Zaya because I don't feel like I've done any of this. I feel like he has. He's the one that's given me the strength to do it and given me the passion and the desire to do it. I feel like he's been pushing me from behind the scenes this whole time to do this. Even when there's times when I'm so exhausted and I'm so tired and I really feel like I can't carry on anymore. But I push through and I keep doing it because he reminds me every now and then I'll get a little reminder, a little hello from heaven, I call it, um, to remind me why I do this, why it's important for me to do this, because ultimately we're never going to get our son back. He's never coming back. But if we can help another family and stop them from having to go through what we went through, or even at the very least to be able to support them after and to navigate their grief and their journey a bit better than it could be, then it's all worthwhile. It's so important. Even things to do with the hospital complaints. I deal with these complaints because if we don't stand up and say something, if we don't challenge people, things will never change. And if we don't tell them they're wrong, then how are they going to know they're wrong? They're not going to look back and think, oh, yeah, no, that situation was really wrong. No one said anything, but I feel like it was. No, we need to tell them and we need to challenge people so they do better because things do need to be do because unfortunately there's still lots of babies dying, lots of babies, especially babies of color. And then why? When there's so much more research out there now, and there's so much more evidence to show that when active support is given to babies, especially from certain ages, certain gestations, that there's chances of survival are greater. And if there are times where we can't change the outcome, the support and the aftercare that we give afterwards can be so much better. There's still so much work that needs to be done and so much more improvements and trauma-led services that we need. So I'll continue to do this work. We will continue to do this. And I feel like it's Zion. He's just pushing to say, no, man, keep going, because things aren't changing quick enough. And I need to do my bit. I know that. I thought I need to do my bit to see change and to see improvements and better outcomes for families and especially families of colour. So yeah, thank you for agreeing to do this today. And come on here because you don't normally see him on in front of the camera. But he's come and he's done this today. And I do really appreciate it. No, thank you.
My pleasure. Happy birthday, son.
Happy birthday, Zion.